left to perish in a black box on an abandoned planet until a human heard her call part. 1. The forgotten signal. The old transport ship Wanderer looked like junk compared to the sleek vessels of other species. Its hull was patched with metal from a dozen different worlds. Wires hung loose in some places. The engine made strange noises that would worry any sane pilot. But Dr. Elena Vasquez loved her ship exactly as it was. Elena pressed her face against the small window as her ship approached Kepler 442c. The planet looked dead from space. Its surface was brown and gray with no green anywhere. Storms of radiation swept across the land like angry ghosts. The planet's star was dying, turning from bright yellow to dull orange. Soon it would become a red giant and swallow this world completely. "Warning," said Aria, the ship's AI computer. "Radiation levels are dangerous. Galactic Council recommends avoiding the system." "When have I ever listened to Council recommendations?" Elena said with a smile. She was a thin woman with dark hair always pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her clothes were practical, boots that could handle any terrain, pants with many pockets for tools, and a jacket covered in patches from different worlds she had visited. Elena was an archaeologist, but not the kind who worked in safe museums. She explored dead worlds looking for secrets that other species had forgotten or ignored. While other archaeologists stayed on peaceful planets with good weather, Elena went to the dangerous places. The places where amazing discoveries waited. "Arya, run another scan for energy readings," she said as they entered orbit. Scanning, detecting multiple anomalies, most likely stellar interference from the dying star. "Show me the anomalies." A holographic display appeared in front of Elena. It showed the planet with dozens of small red dots scattered across the surface. Most were random, the kind of energy noise that dying stars created. But Elena had been doing this work for 15 years. She knew the difference between random noise and something interesting. "There," she pointed to one dot near what looked like ruins of a large city. "That one's different. Negative. All readings appear to be natural stellar interference." "Aria, you're a wonderful computer, but you think like a computer. I'm human. I see patterns differently." Elena began preparing her exploration gear. "That signal has a rhythm. Natural interference doesn't have rhythm." Aria made a sound that might have been a sigh if computers could sigh. "Dr. Vasquez, your tendency to anthropomorphize random data has led to 17 false discoveries in the past year. And 3 amazing discoveries that changed galactic archaeology forever," Elena replied cheerfully. She suited up in her environmental gear. The suit was human-made, which meant it was heavier and less elegant than alien designs. But it was also tougher and easier to repair with basic tools. Elena had learned long ago that fancy equipment broke down at the worst moments. Simple, sturdy gear kept you alive. The Wanderer descended through the planet's thin atmosphere. Elena piloted manually instead of using the auto systems. Other species thought humans were crazy for preferring manual control, but Elena liked feeling connected to her ship. The storms of radiation made the ride bumpy, but she guided the ship safely to the surface near the ancient ruins. The city had been magnificent once. Elena could see the remains of towers that had reached toward the sky like crystal fingers. The Zephyrians had been master builders, creating structures that seemed to grow naturally from the ground. But 300 years of abandonment had not been kind. The towers were broken now, their crystal surfaces cracked and dark. Elena stepped out of her ship onto the alien world. Her radiation detector immediately began clicking rapidly. The levels were high but not immediately deadly. She had maybe 6 hours before she would need to return to the ship for medical treatment. "Beginning exploration of the Zephyrian governmental complex," she recorded in her voice log. "The architecture suggests this was a major administrative center. Looking for cultural artifacts or data storage systems." She walked carefully through the ruins. The Zephyrians had been tall, elegant beings with long limbs and translucent skin. Their doorways were higher than human standard, and their furniture looked more like art than practical items. Elena had studied their culture extensively, but seeing their abandoned homes always made her feel sad. The energy reading was stronger now. Elena followed her detector deeper into the complex. The signal led her down a ramp into underground levels that had been protected from the worst of the weather. Her flashlight beam revealed corridors lined with what looked like offices or meeting rooms. "The signal is coming from below," she murmured, checking her readings. "Much stronger now." She found a staircase leading even deeper. The stairs were carved from single pieces of stone, worn smooth by countless Zephyrian feet. Elena descended carefully, aware that she was probably the first living being to walk here in centuries. The underground levels were different from the offices above. These corridors were wider, with heavier doors. This looked like a security area or maybe storage for important items. Elena's excitement grew. Archaeological treasures were often hidden in places like this. Her detector was clicking almost constantly now. The energy reading was very strong, coming from somewhere just ahead. Elena turned a corner and stopped in surprise. The corridor ended in a massive door made of black metal. The door was perfectly smooth with no handles or visible controls. Symbols were carved deep into its surface, Zephyrian writing that Elena could partially read. The words spoke of danger, of containment, of things that must never be released. "Arya, are you getting these readings?" Elena asked through her communication system. "Affirmative. The energy source is behind that door. Dr. Vasquez, those symbols indicate this is a containment facility. Galactic protocols strictly forbid opening such—" "I know the protocols," Elena interrupted. She approached the door slowly. Her detector was going crazy now, clicking so fast it almost sounded like static. But underneath the noise, Elena could hear something else. A pattern. A rhythm. She turned off the detector and listened carefully. Yes, there it was. Like a heartbeat, but not quite. More like someone tapping Morse code. Elena pulled out her portable recording equipment and began documenting the sounds. For 20 minutes she recorded, and the pattern never changed. It was definitely artificial. Someone or something was making this noise deliberately. Area. Run analysis on this audio pattern. After a moment, the AI responded. Pattern contains mathematical sequences, beginning with prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. Elena's breath caught. Someone's trying to communicate. Impossible! This facility has been sealed for over 3 centuries. But Elena was already pulling out her tools. If someone was alive in there trying to communicate, she couldn't just walk away. It went against everything she believed in as both a scientist and a human being. She examined the door more carefully. It was a masterpiece of engineering, probably requiring specific bio-readings or codes to open, the kind of lock that would take teams of experts years to crack. But Elena had learned something in her years of exploration. Sometimes the best approach wasn't the most obvious one. She placed her hand against the door and felt a slight vibration. The tapping from inside was actually creating tiny movements in the metal. Elena smiled. She had an idea. From her toolkit, she pulled out a simple contact microphone and attached it to the door. Then she connected it to her portable computer and began working. If someone inside was trying to communicate with math, maybe she could talk back the same way. Elena began tapping her own response against the door. Simple at first, just repeating the prime number sequence she had heard. Then she added her own numbers, squares, then cubes. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the tapping from inside changed. New patterns, more complex mathematics, Fibonacci sequences. Golden ratios, my God, Elena whispered. There's someone in there. Someone intelligent. Someone who's been alone for 300 years. A radiation storm was building outside. Elena could see the warning lights flashing on her equipment. She would have to return to her ship soon or risk serious exposure, but she couldn't leave, not now. Not when someone had been waiting so long for rescue. She began recording everything. The mathematical conversations, the door's specifications, the energy readings. Whatever was behind that door, whoever was trying to communicate, Elena was going to find a way to help them, even if it meant breaking every rule in the galaxy. As she packed up her equipment, Elena made a promise to the intelligence behind the door. She spoke aloud, hoping somehow they could hear her through the thick metal. I don't know who you are, but I'm coming back. Humans don't leave people behind. That's just who we are. The tapping from inside changed one more time. Now it sounded almost like relief. Elena hurried back to her ship as the radiation storm grew stronger. She had work to do, rules to break and someone to save. It was going to be the most dangerous thing she had ever attempted. It was going to be perfectly, wonderfully human. Left to perish in a black box on an abandoned planet, until a human heard her call part 2. Breaking the unbreakable, Elena spent 3 days in orbit around Kepler 442c, studying everything she had recorded. Her ship's small laboratory was now covered with papers, diagrams, and computer screens, showing mathematical patterns. Aria watched nervously as Elena worked without proper sleep or meals. "Dr. Vasquez, you have consumed only protein bars and coffee for 72 hours, the AI said. "This is not healthy human behavior. Someone has been trapped for 300 years. Aria, I think they can wait a little longer for me to figure this out." Elena rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the mathematical sequences again. The patterns were becoming clearer now. The being inside wasn't just showing off mathematical knowledge. They were trying to teach Elena something. The sequences started simple, then became more complex, like a teacher helping a student understand difficult concepts. "Look at this," Elena said, pointing to her screen. "First they showed me prime numbers. Basic math. Then they moved to squares and cubes when I responded correctly. Now they're showing me quantum mathematics." "Quantum mathematics are extremely advanced," Aria noted. "Very few species in the galaxy understand such concepts. But they're not just showing me random equations. They're teaching me about quantum fields, specifically." Elena paused as understanding hit her. "They're teaching me how their prison works." The mathematical lessons continued for hours each day. Elena would tap questions against the ship's hull, transmitting them to the planet's surface through low-frequency vibrations. The trapped being would respond with new mathematical concepts. Slowly, Elena began to understand the science behind the containment door. The prison was called a quantum lock, a barrier that existed partially outside normal space-time. It was impossible to break with normal tools because it wasn't entirely there to break. The lock existed in multiple dimensions at once, shifting between realities to avoid any attempt to damage it. "This is incredible technology," Elena muttered, studying the diagrams she had drawn. "No wonder the Galactic Council forbids opening these things. They probably don't understand how they work." "Dr. Vasquez," Aria said carefully. "Perhaps the Council forbids opening them for good reasons. What if dangerous criminals are stored in such facilities?" Elena looked up from her work. "Aria, does a dangerous criminal spend months patiently teaching quantum mathematics to a stranger? Does a monster try to help their potential rescuer understand complex science?" The AI was quiet for a moment. "You make a valid point. Besides," Elena said, turning back to her diagrams, "I'm human. We're supposed to do stupid, dangerous things to help people. It's practically our species' motto." On the fourth day, Elena thought she understood enough to try something. The being inside had taught her that quantum locks had one weakness. They needed constant energy to maintain their multidimensional state. If that energy could be disrupted at just the right frequency, the lock would collapse back into normal space-time where it could be opened normally. The problem was creating the right frequency. It required precise timing and enormous amounts of power. The kind of equipment needed would fill a large spacecraft and require a team of trained technicians to operate. Elena looked around her small, cluttered ship and grinned. "Good thing I'm too stupid to know when something is impossible." She began pulling apart non-essential systems from her ship. The entertainment system, backup life support, secondary navigation computers. Everything that wasn't absolutely needed for survival. Elena had always been good with her hands, a skill that made other species shake their heads in confusion. Why would an intelligent being want to build things manually when computers could do it better? But Elena knew something they didn't. Sometimes the best solutions came from thinking creatively, not just logically. Computers were logical. Humans were creative. She worked for 2 days straight, building something that no proper engineer would ever approve of. It was a combination of salvaged ship parts, jury-rigged power systems, and equipment held together with what humans called duct tape and hope. The device looked like it might explode at any moment. "Dr. Vasquez," Aria said nervously, "that device violates 47 safety protocols and appears to have been assembled by someone having a mental breakdown." "Thank you, Aria. That's exactly the look I was going for." Elena loaded her makeshift equipment onto the ship's shuttle and prepared to return to the planet's surface. The radiation storms were getting worse as the star continued to die, but her device needed to be close to the quantum lock to work properly. "One more thing, Aria," Elena said as she prepared to leave. "If this doesn't work and I get trapped down there, send my research notes to the Galactic Archaeological Society. Make sure they know there's someone alive in that facility who needs help. Dr. Vasquez, perhaps we should contact the authorities now and..." "No time," The star is dying faster than predicted. If I don't try this soon, the radiation will make the planet completely uninhabitable. Elena sealed her helmet and headed for the shuttle. Besides, since when do humans wait for permission to do the right thing? The descent through the radiation storms was terrifying. Elena's shuttle was shaken like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Lightning cracked around the small craft, and her instruments went crazy from electromagnetic interference. But Elena held on, guided the shuttle through pure instinct and stubbornness, and somehow reached the surface in one piece. The ruins looked worse than before. The radiation was eating away at the remaining structures, turning crystal into powder and metal into rust. Elena had maybe 4 hours before the exposure would kill her, even with her protective suit. She dragged her improvised equipment through the corridors to the quantum lock. The mathematical tapping from inside began immediately. Rapid, excited patterns that Elena interpreted as encouragement. "I'm here," she said aloud, hoping somehow the being inside could hear her voice. "I'm going to try to get you out. This might not work, but I have to try." She set up her device in front of the massive door. The equipment hummed and sparked in ways that would terrify any safety inspector. Elena connected power cables, adjusted frequency modulators, and whispered prayers to God she wasn't sure she believed in. "Initiating quantum disruption sequence," she announced, mostly for her own confidence. The device began to vibrate, creating a low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Elena watched her instruments carefully, adjusting the frequency based on the mathematical lessons she had learned. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Elena began to worry that her understanding was wrong, that her equipment was insufficient, that she had failed. Then the door began to glow. The quantum lock was fighting her device, shifting between dimensions to avoid the disruptive frequency, but Elena's equipment was too crude, too random, too chaotically human for the sophisticated alien technology to predict. The lock couldn't adapt to something that barely made sense even to its creator. The glow grew brighter. The mathematical tapping from inside became rapid and excited. Elena increased power to her device even though the safety readings were already deep in the red zone. "Come on," she muttered. "Work, you beautiful pile of junk." Suddenly the glow vanished. The quantum lock collapsed back into normal space-time with a sound like reality tearing. The massive door was now just a door. Impressive, but no longer impossible. Elena's equipment died with a shower of sparks and the smell of burning electronics. But it had worked. The unbreakable lock was broken. She approached the door and found manual controls that had been hidden in quantum space. With shaking hands, she activated the release mechanism. The door began to open slowly, revealing a chamber beyond. Light spilled out. Not harsh artificial light, but something warm and gentle. And in that light, Elena saw movement. Someone was alive in there. Someone who had been waiting 3 centuries for rescue. Someone who was about to learn that humans never, ever give up on people who need help. The door finished opening, and Elena stepped forward to meet the being she had worked so hard to save. Her heart was pounding with excitement, fear, and the simple human joy of knowing she had done something impossible. Something wonderfully, stubbornly, perfectly human. Left to perish in a black box on an abandoned planet, until a human heard her call. Part 3. The price of salvation. Elena stepped through the doorway and gasped. The chamber inside was beautiful beyond imagination. The walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft, warm light. The air inside was clean and breathable, somehow perfectly preserved after 3 centuries. But what took Elena's breath away was the being floating in the center of the room. She was clearly Zephyrian, but unlike any Elena had seen in historical records. Her skin was translucent like frosted glass, and tiny points of light moved beneath it like captured stars. She was tall and graceful, with long silver hair that seemed to move in a breeze that didn't exist. Her eyes were the most incredible part. They held depths like looking into space itself, with tiny galaxies spinning in their darkness. The being looked up as Elena entered. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the first time either had seen another living person in so long. "Hello," Elena said softly. Her voice echoed strangely in the crystal chamber. The Zephyrian tilted her head, listening. Then she spoke, and her voice was like music made of wind chimes and distant thunder. Elena couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Gratitude, wonder, and desperate hope. Elena pulled out her translation device. It took a few minutes to analyze the Zephyrian's speech patterns, but soon it began converting her words to standard galactic. You came back, the Zephyrian said, her translated voice filled with amazement. I had begun to think I was speaking to another dream. Dreams don't break quantum locks, Elena said with a smile. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez. I'm human. What's your name? Lyra, she replied. I was a researcher of stellar phenomena. She moved closer and Elena could see that she was weak. Her movements were slow and careful, like someone recovering from a long illness. How long have you been in here, Lyra? 317 standard years, 42 days, 16 hours, Lyra said immediately. I have been counting. Elena felt her heart break a little. 3 centuries of loneliness. No wonder Lyra had been so eager to communicate with anyone who would listen. Why were you imprisoned? Elena asked gently. Lyra's expression became sad. I was not imprisoned. I was protected. My people, they feared my research. I had found a way to save our dying son, but the process required experiments with dark matter. The Council of Elders decided my work was too dangerous. She moved to one of the crystal walls, which began displaying images at her touch. Elena saw star charts, mathematical formulas, and diagrams of stellar engineering that were far beyond anything she had ever seen. They sealed me here while they debated what to do, Lyra continued. The chamber was designed to keep me safe until they reached a decision. But then, her voice broke. The evacuation began. Everyone was so frightened, so desperate to escape. In the chaos, they forgot about me. Everyone who knew I was here died in the evacuation ships or stayed behind and perished when the radiation got worse. Elena stared at the star charts Lyra had shown her. You really found a way to save dying stars? Yes, but my people died anyway because they were too afraid to let me try. Lyra touched another part of the wall, and new images appeared. I have had 3 centuries to perfect my theories. I could save not just our star, but any dying star in the galaxy. That's incredible. Do you know how many worlds are facing the same problem as yours? According to my calculations, approximately 437 inhabited systems will lose their stars within the next millennium. Billions of lives could be saved. Elena's mind raced. This wasn't just about rescuing one person anymore. Lyra held knowledge that could save entire civilizations. But first, they had to get off this dying planet. Lyra, I need to ask you something important. Can you survive outside this chamber? My ship is in orbit, but the journey to reach it will expose you to radiation. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. The quantum field that kept me imprisoned also preserved my life. Outside this chamber, I will begin aging normally again. The radiation on this planet will kill me within hours. Elena felt cold fear in her stomach. There has to be another way. Perhaps, Lyra said thoughtfully. Show me your ship's specifications. Elena connected her tablet to the chamber's systems. Lyra studied the Wanderer's design with interest. Your vessel is unusual, she said politely. It's a piece of junk held together with spare parts and stubbornness, Elena laughed. But it's gotten me through worse situations than this. Actually, its crude construction might be perfect for what we need. Lyra began manipulating the wall displays, showing new designs. If we modify your ship's power core and create a temporary quantum field generator, we could extend this chamber's protection around both of us during the journey to orbit. Elena studied the plans. They were brilliant, but they would require completely rebuilding major parts of her ship. How long would this take? With proper equipment, perhaps a few days. I don't have proper equipment. I have basic tools, salvage parts, and whatever we can pull out of this chamber. Lyra looked puzzled. Then it's impossible. Elena grinned. Lyra, you're about to learn something important about humans. We specialize in impossible. They worked together for hours, planning their escape. Lyra provided the scientific knowledge while Elena figured out practical ways to build the necessary equipment. It was like watching 2 different types of intelligence work together. Lyra's perfect theoretical understanding, and Elena's messy, practical creativity. But their planning was interrupted by an alarm from Elena's suit. Her radiation exposure was reaching dangerous levels. I have to get back to my ship, Elena said reluctantly, but I'll return tomorrow with supplies. Wait. Lyra touched the wall again and a small section of crystal broke away. It continued to glow with warm light. Take this. It will provide some protection from the radiation and... She hesitated. It will let you know I'm still alive. If anything happens to me, the light will fade. Elena took the crystal carefully. It was warm in her hands and pulsed gently like a heartbeat. Thank you. As she prepared to leave, Lyra spoke again. Elena, I must tell you something. The quantum disruption you created to free me, it sent energy signatures across space. If there are monitoring stations still active in this system, they will have detected what you did. What does that mean? It means others may be coming, and they may not be as friendly as you. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the radiation. How long do we have? If someone was monitoring this system, they could be here within days. Elena looked at the crystal in her hand, then at Lyra floating in her chamber of living light. The Zephyrian had waited 3 centuries for rescue. Elena wasn't about to let anyone stop that rescue now. Then we'd better work fast, she said. I'm not leaving you here, Lyra. I don't care who comes looking for us. As Elena made her way back to the shuttle, she noticed something troubling. Her ship's long-range sensors were picking up unusual energy readings at the edge of the system. Something was out there, moving toward them. She looked down at Lyra's crystal, glowing warm and steady in her hand. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. Because that's what humans did. They kept their promises, even when keeping them seemed impossible. Even when it meant facing the entire galaxy to save one person who had been forgotten and left to die alone. The crystal pulsed brighter, as if responding to her determination. Elena smiled grimly and began planning for a fight she probably couldn't win. It was going to be perfectly human. Left to perish in a black box on an abandoned planet, until a human heard her call. Part 4. When humanity says no, Elena had been working for 18 hours straight when Aria's urgent alarm woke her from exhausted sleep. She had been dreaming of crystal chambers and starlight eyes, but the AI's voice cut through her dreams like a knife. Dr. Vasquez, we have company. 3 ships approaching from the outer system. Military configuration. Elena jolted awake in her pilot's chair, tools still scattered around her. She had been modifying the Wanderer's power systems based on Lyra's designs, trying to create the quantum field generator they needed. Her hands were covered in grease and small cuts from working with sharp metal. Show me, she said, wiping her hands on her already dirty jumpsuit. The main screen displayed 3 sleek vessels approaching Kepler 442c. They were beautiful ships, all smooth curves and gleaming metal. The kind of vessels that cost more than Elena's entire life savings. The kind that belonged to people with real power in the galaxy. Hegemony ships, Elena muttered. Of course it's the hegemony. The galactic hegemony was the closest thing the galaxy had to a government. They kept peace between species, enforced trade laws, and made sure dangerous technologies didn't fall into the wrong hands. They were efficient, organized, and absolutely convinced they knew what was best for everyone. Elena had dealt with them before. They didn't like archaeologists who asked too many questions or went places they weren't supposed to go. Attention, unknown vessel, came a voice over the communication system. The translator indicated it was an Altarian speaker, one of the hegemony's most rigid species. This is Commander Thex of the Enforcement Fleet. You are operating in violation of containment protocols. Surrender immediately for processing. Elena looked at Lyra's crystal, still glowing warm and steady in her hand. Down on the planet's surface, her new friend was waiting for rescue. 300 years of waiting, and now the hegemony wanted to stop them when they were so close to freedom. Area, how long until they reach us? At current speed, approximately 2 hours. Elena made a decision that would have shocked any rational person. Instead of running or surrendering, she began suiting up for another trip to the planet's surface. Dr. Vasquez, what are you doing? I'm going to get Lyra. We're leaving. Now. The quantum field generator isn't ready. The modifications to the ship aren't complete. This is suicide. Elena sealed her helmet and headed for the shuttle bay. Aria, in all the time you've known me, when have I ever chosen the sensible option? The AI was quiet for a moment. Never. But Dr. Vasquez, those are warships. They can destroy our vessel with a single shot. Then we'd better not give them the chance. Elena climbed into her shuttle and began the launch sequence. Send them a message. Tell them I'm conducting legitimate archaeological research and they have no authority here. They will not believe that. I know, but it'll buy us some time while they argue about jurisdiction. Elena launched from the Wanderer and dove toward the planet's surface. The radiation storms were worse than ever. The dying star was going through its final collapse phase. Lightning cracked across the sky in colors that had no names. The shuttle shook and rattled as Elena fought to control it. Behind her, she could see the hegemony ships approaching her vessel. They were probably scanning it, trying to figure out what she had been doing. Soon they would detect the quantum disruption signatures from her earlier work breaking the containment lock. Elena reached the ruins and ran through the corridors as fast as her radiation suit would allow. Every second counted now. When she reached Lyra's chamber, she found the Zephyrian waiting for her. "The ships," Lyra said immediately. "I felt their quantum drives approaching. Hegemony enforcers." "How did you know?" "I can sense quantum disturbances across space. It's part of my gift." Lyra's starlight eyes were worried. "Elena, they will not let us leave. The knowledge I carry. If they learn what I know about stellar engineering, they will either lock me away forever or kill me to prevent others from having it." "Over my dead body," Elena said firmly. She began connecting the half-finished quantum field generator to the chamber's power systems. "How much of this equipment do we need to keep you alive during transport?" "All of it." "Elena, the device isn't ready. One miscalculation and we'll both die in quantum collapse. Then we'd better not miscalculate." Elena's hands moved quickly, connecting cables and adjusting settings based on the notes she had taken. "Lyra, I need you to help me. You understand the science better than anyone." They worked together frantically, Lyra providing calculations while Elena built the physical connections. It was crazy, dangerous work, the kind of thing that should have taken weeks of careful preparation. But Elena had learned something in her years of archaeology. Sometimes the impossible became possible when you had no other choice. Above them, Elena could hear the sound of ships landing, heavy footsteps in the corridors. The hegemony forces had arrived. "Elena," Lyra said quietly, "there's something else you should know about my research. The stellar rejuvenation process. It doesn't just save dying stars. It makes them stronger, brighter. A star that has been healed this way will burn for twice as long as a natural star." Elena paused in her work. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because the hegemony's power comes partly from controlling rare stellar engineering technology. They charge enormous fees to help dying worlds. If my knowledge becomes public, their monopoly ends. That's why they really want to stop us." "Yes. They don't care about containment protocols. They care about profit and control." The footsteps were getting closer. Elena could hear voices echoing through the ruins, authoritative, commanding voices that expected immediate obedience. "How long do we need?" Elena asked. 3 minutes to initialize the quantum field, maybe 4. Then we're going to have company." Elena pulled out her sidearm, a simple human projectile weapon that most species considered primitive. She positioned herself between Lyra and the chamber entrance. Commander Thex appeared in the doorway, flanked by 2 armed soldiers. He was tall and blue-skinned with the kind of precise posture that came from a lifetime in the military. His uniform was perfect, his weapons were top quality, and his expression showed he was used to being obeyed without question. "Step away from the containment breach," he ordered. "You are under arrest for violation of Galactic Containment Protocol 7 Alpha." "I'm conducting legitimate archaeological research," Elena replied, not moving from her position. "You have released a dangerous entity from quantum imprisonment. Surrender now and you will be processed according to standard law." Behind Elena, the quantum field generator hummed louder. 2 minutes. "That dangerous entity is a person," Elena said. "Her name is Lyra. She was abandoned here by accident 3 centuries ago. Irrelevant. Containment protocols exist for the safety of all galactic civilization. Your containment protocols left an innocent person to die alone." Commander Thex's expression didn't change. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Standard hegemony policy." Elena felt anger burning in her chest. This was exactly why she preferred dealing with ancient ruins instead of living people. Ancient civilizations might have made mistakes, but at least they weren't standing in front of her making those mistakes right now. "Here's some human policy for you," Elena said, raising her weapon. Nobody gets left behind. The Altarian commander looked puzzled. You would fight 3 armed soldiers to protect 1 alien researcher? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Thex exchanged glances with his soldiers. Elena could see they were confused by her response. Most species in the galaxy were logical, practical. They understood cost-benefit analysis and efficient resource allocation. They didn't understand humans. Dr. Vasquez, Thex said carefully. You cannot possibly win this confrontation. Be logical. Elena smiled grimly. Commander, if humans were logical, we'd never have made it to the stars. Behind her, the quantum field generator reached full power. The chamber began to glow with the same warm light as Lyra's crystal. 1 minute. Final warning, Thex said, raising his own weapon. Elena looked back at Lyra, floating in her chamber of living crystal, waiting after 3 centuries for someone to care enough to save her. Lyra, Elena said, hold on tight. This is going to get interesting. The quantum field expanded outward, surrounding both of them in protective energy. Elena felt the strange sensation of existing in multiple dimensions at once. And then she did something that would be talked about in hegemony reports for years to come. She told the entire galactic government exactly what humans thought of their rules. Left to perish in a black box on an abandoned planet, until a human heard her call Part 5. The light that saves. Worlds Elena stood in the glowing quantum field. Her weapon pointed at 3 of the galaxy's most elite soldiers. The air around her and Lyra shimmered with energy that bent light and twisted space. She felt strange, like she was standing in multiple places at the same time. Commander, she said to Thex, I'm going to make you an offer. Walk away now and nobody gets hurt. The Altarian officer looked at her like she was insane. You are 1 human with a primitive projectile weapon, facing 3 hegemony enforcers with military-grade equipment. This is not a negotiation. You're right, Elena said with a grin. It's not. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, her emergency transmitter. With 1 quick motion, she activated it and spoke clearly into the pickup. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, broadcasting on all galactic frequencies. I'm transmitting the complete stellar rejuvenation research of Dr. Lyra of Zephyr Prime. This information is now public domain. Any world with a dying star can use it freely. Commander Thex's eyes went wide. Stop, you don't understand what you're doing. But Elena was already uploading Lyra's research through her transmitter. The quantum field around them boosted the signal, sending it across space to every communication relay in the galaxy. Within minutes, the data would reach thousands of worlds. Elena, Lyra said in amazement, you're giving away knowledge worth more than entire star systems. Knowledge belongs to everyone, Elena replied, still watching the hegemony soldiers, especially knowledge that can save lives. The transmission finished. Somewhere across the galaxy, scientists and engineers were already receiving plans that could save their dying worlds. The hegemony's monopoly on stellar engineering had just ended. Commander Thex lowered his weapon slowly. Do you have any idea what you've just done? The economic disruption alone will affect billions of beings. Yeah, Elena said cheerfully. It'll make stellar engineering cheap enough for everyone to afford. Billions of beings won't have to watch their worlds die because they can't pay the hegemony's fees. The Hegemony Council will never allow this. They'll declare the research illegal, ban its use. Elena looked at him like he was the one being stupid. Commander, you can't make physics illegal. Once people know how to save their stars, they're going to save their stars. The only question is whether the hegemony wants to help them or get in their way. Behind her, Lyra was manipulating the chamber's crystal walls, which had begun displaying images from across the galaxy. Elena, look. The first responses are coming in. The displays showed star charts with dozens of red dots, all the dying stars that had received the transmission. As they watched, some of the dots began changing color, shifting from red to yellow to bright white. They're already starting the process, Lyra said with wonder in her voice. Worlds I've never heard of are using my research to save their stars. Elena felt a warm satisfaction in her chest. This was why she loved archaeology, not for the fame or the discovery, but for the moments when the past could help the future. Commander Thex was speaking rapidly into his own communication device, probably reporting to his superiors. After a few minutes, he turned back to Elena with an expression of complete confusion. "My orders have changed," he said stiffly. "The Hegemony Council has decided that your actions fall under the archaeological preservation exception to containment protocols." Elena blinked. "There's no such thing as an archaeological preservation exception. There is now. Apparently it was created 12 minutes ago in an emergency council session." Elena understood immediately. The Hegemony was doing damage control. They couldn't stop the spread of Lyra's research now that it was public, so they were pretending they had meant to allow it all along. Politicians were the same everywhere in the galaxy. "So we're free to go?" Elena asked. "You are free to continue your archaeological work," Thex said, clearly unhappy with his new orders. The entity known as Lyra is now classified as a recovered historical researcher, rather than a contained threat. "Her name is Dr. Lyra," Elena corrected. "And she's not an entity. She's a person." Thex's soldiers were already packing up their equipment. The Altarian looked like he wanted to arrest them all anyway, but orders were orders. "Dr. Vasquez," he said formally, "the Hegemony Council wishes to discuss your methods in detail at some point in the future." "I'll be sure to put that on my calendar," Elena replied. "Right after my vacation to the Crab Nebula." As the Hegemony forces retreated, Elena finally allowed herself to relax. The quantum field generator was holding steady, and Lyra was safely protected inside its energy bubble. "We did it," Elena said, hardly believing it herself. "We did more than that," Lyra replied, gesturing to the displays still showing star charts. "Look, across the galaxy more dots were changing color. Dying stars were being reborn, their light growing brighter and stronger. Worlds that had been preparing for evacuation were canceling their emergency plans. Children who had grown up thinking they would watch their sun die were seeing it shine brighter than ever before. 37 worlds have begun the rejuvenation process," Lyra reported. "Estimated population saved 4.6 billion sentient beings." Elena stared at the numbers, trying to wrap her mind around what they had accomplished. How many more worlds could use this technology? Based on current stellar data, 437 inhabited systems will benefit from this research within the next millennium. Total estimated lives saved. Lyra paused as she calculated. Approximately 800 billion beings. Elena sat down hard on a piece of rubble. 800 billion lives, that was more people than she could imagine. All saved because she had been too stubborn to follow the rules. "Lyra," she said quietly, "what do we do now?" The Zephyrian smiled, and her expression was like watching a sunrise. "We build a ship capable of faster-than-light travel with quantum field protection. We visit the worlds that are using my research. We help them perfect the process. We make sure no one else gets left behind." Elena looked around the ruined chamber that had been Lyra's prison for 3 centuries. Soon they would leave this dying world forever. But first there was something she needed to know. "Why did you trust me?" Elena asked. "You taught me everything I needed to free you, even though you didn't know anything about me. I could have been anyone." Lyra's starlight eyes grew thoughtful. "I watched you through quantum probability streams. I saw the choices you would make before you made them. But more than that, I heard the way you spoke to me through the door. You didn't speak like someone who wanted to use me or control me. You spoke like someone who cared about a stranger simply because they needed help." She moved closer to Elena, the quantum field shimmering around both of them. "In 3 centuries of solitude, I dreamed of many different kinds of rescue. But I never dreamed of someone like you, someone who would risk everything, break every rule, and give away priceless knowledge just to save one person." Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. "That's just what humans do, Lyra. We're too stupid to know when something is impossible, and too stubborn to give up on people who need help. Then the galaxy is fortunate to have humans in it." Elena stood up and began gathering her equipment. The quantum field generator was stable enough to transport them both to her ship. From there, they could escape this dying system and begin their new mission. As they prepared to leave, Elena took one last look around the crystal chamber. It had been a prison for 3 centuries, but it had also preserved something precious, knowledge that would save countless lives across the galaxy. "Ready to see what the universe looks like when you're not trapped in a box?" Elena asked. Lyra's smile was brighter than stars. "I've been ready for 300 years. Together they walked out of the chamber and into the ruined corridors beyond. Behind them, the crystal walls went dark for the first time in centuries. Ahead of them, The cosmos held infinite possibilities for two beings who had proven that sometimes the most human thing you can do is refuse to let someone die alone. In the distance, Kepler 442c's star flickered as its death throes continued, but across the galaxy, dozens of other stars were growing brighter, their light reaching across space like messages of hope. The age of leaving people behind was ending. The age of human stubbornness had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.